Hakuna mtu ambaye hataki Kenya, kila mtu anataka amani.
Yesu ni nuru yangu.
We are still calling the president and the opposition to sit down and have dialogue. We need peace in this nation. Even with the current ease that people are going through a lot of hardship, without peace we cannot be able to move on.
We are not in the handshakes. We are not in the business of engaging on how to share power and positions. We shall engage on issues that are people-centric.
Kama kuna watu wananiuliza mimi Kawaya nikae chini na mwenye niliangusha. Na hatuwezi kwanza mwanzo ukikaa chini na watu ambao uliangusha. Sasa hiyo bibi yako tutaangalia kile kitaenda. Simwanua angalia mimi niko na hiyo power sasa. After some pain, let us give the president time to work.
Negotiations must include the issue of inclusivity. Kenya Kwanza must be made to disown and disavow the illegal, unconstitutional, and divisive efforts to turn Kenya into a private company.
You will hear what they call broadly inclusivity. Inclusivity is nusu mkate. That is why they want us to give them a blank check. Lakini ngo, there will be no blank check. The issues that were agreed on are 5 issues. If you don't want to take that, please go back to the streets.
We disown the statement by Honorable Gichungwa. Azimio had nothing to do with it. Its contents were those of Kenya Kwanza. Their wish list.
Let them get President Olusegun Obasanjo to confirm whether what is in my statement and not facts. It's not a factual representation of the meeting they had. I would dare Raila Odinga to look at Kenyans straight in the eye like I'm looking at that camera and tell Kenyans those issues are not factual.
Our priority for discussion is the escalating cost of living, which has only got worse with the lifting of the conservatory Honda on the 2023 Finance Act.
I believe there has been a progression from what we had to slightly a higher level of talks, now nearer to the nerve center of the government, which is the presidency.
We needed each and every police officer available for that work, because the ones we had were not sufficient. And the very logical decision by Kindiki and IG Kome, first get those ones guarding those who are doing the demonstrations to come and protect the people of Kenya. Where did you want us to get other policemen from? We had to get them from somewhere. And you start with those who are guarding the people who are arranging the demonstration. That is what we did. But since I have not seen a commitment that you denounce violence and give Kenyans undertaking that you not go back to the streets, those policemen will stay on standby for now. If in the next 2-3 months you are of good behavior, there is no demonstration, there is no chaos, we shall return the men to you to guard you. Lakini saa hii haiwezekani.
And you need to grab also the dailies as well. As you can see in the Daily Nation today, this is the editorial cartoon that has been drawn by Victor there. And you can see the former governor of Meru there coming out from the political oblivion box right now with Maandamano. Right? And he's running towards, of course, the other side of Azimio. Let's talk, William, is what you can see everyone looking at that particular, was it a tweet? Now, the symbol is X. It's not really Twitter. That is what we have in the Daily Nation. In the Star, we have a microphone. The microphone stand, and the microphone is ahead of Kalonzo Musyoka. This is what we have in the Stars. And yes, at least they've made up their position who is leading this side of the talks. And we have Kalonzo Musyoka, we have the issues as well. But on the other side, yes, Kenya Kwanza, they're still biding their time. We're yet to know who will be actually chairing this particular dialogue. And in the People Daily today, as you can see, Baba is seated there now, ready to dine. He says, as you can see, I've always been ready for the talks. and he's waiting for the of course the
Banquet.
the banquet and the plate to be
Served.
of course. And we can see the blue band margarine there, and that is you remember that model.
Breakfast, yeah.
It is Raila who's taking a bite at the nusu mukate.
Where is the mkate?
You can see it here. That is actually in the editorial pages of the People Daily today. Faramalim. Here you are. You have the People Daily there.
Yes.
So he says, as you can see, I've always been ready for all the talks. Gentlemen, let's just buckle down and start discussing this as well. And we've read the soapbox. Dan Manzo, I want to begin from you.
Yes.
Now, Kenya Kwanza, they've not made their position yet as far as the dialogue is concerned. You've chosen Kalonzo Musyoka. We've seen also there is Senator Okongo Mogeni amongst others. Can you tell us what made up for Azimio to come up with this conclusive faces? Is it all, or it will be also continuing? They'll be adding more faces?
Well, it depends on the way the two sides negotiate. We may have more additions. I can see, you can see there is Opio Adai following Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, and there is Omogeni, and there is someone from the coast. 5 really come from different regions. And I think, ordinarily, negotiations usually go by not an even number. So ordinarily, you have either 3, 7, 5, 7, like that, 9. So most probably we could be having 1 or 2 other additions, depending on how. So
we have 5 from both sides.
It may start at that, then there may be adjustments. So I don't think this is really the final position. Once Kenya Kwanza side makes a choice, then we'll see. But most important, even if you are going to negotiations, one of the biggest issues was cost of living. The Finance Act went through a National Assembly. It was challenged in court, under the High Court. Restraining orders were given, and these orders were lifted by the Court of Appeal pending the hearing, meaning the Finance Act is in implementation. So if you are talking about cost of living, then you are talking about possible amendments to that particular act. That may never happen. So we are yet to see what more is to be discussed, because the key thing is bringing down cost of living. Is the current government really willing to bring down the cost of living? You have seen also the issue of peaceful demonstrations. Can there be peaceful demonstration in Kenya and that call that? Yes. What has been the problem? The problem has been when, first of all, the demonstrations are declared that they cannot happen. And then once you have that declaration, which is unconstitutional in itself, then now when people go on to exercise their constitutional right, then they are killed. That has been the problem. So then who bears the burden of the people who have died? Is it the police? Is who has done this? And I believe there should be, some hearings of some sort. There should be public hearings on this, or judicial inquiry, an inquest into each particular death, whereby people can go and give evidence before a magistrate, and then the probable person who has caused that particular death then can face the law. So when police go to the streets carrying an arm, a firearm, then you have to be responsible personally for whatever happens. In case of inquiry, even internal inquiry within the police themselves or public reports, then the individual police person can be charged. So we also need to resolve that. Quite a number of young innocent people have died in this cause, very many of them. Many people even who are not part of the Maandamano. Was the government not responsible for the protection of the lives of these people? So there are issues there to be sorted out. Other than cost of living, then how do we resolve this issue of Article 37 when people from the business community in Nairobi demonstrated, and they were actually very enforceful in their demonstration to Parliament. No police fired anyone, no tear gas was fired, and everybody went home safely. But when other people do peaceful demonstration, they are distracted or they are stopped, or they are declared to be unlawful. First of all, we don't have a law in this, and the laws which exist, Public Order Act was in the colonial days, and the Penal Code. They are the ones who talk about this sort of thing. Then the Constitution of Kenya. Do these laws rhyme? And then the regulations thereunder have not been enacted by Minister of Interior. The Minister in charge of Interior is the one who should have enacted this, brought to Parliament these regulations, because the ones which were there, which were valid, expired in the year 2010. And by 2012, there should have been new regulations on the issue of demonstrations and the Public Order Act. That is not there still. So can you still declare that the demonstrations are not peaceful unless there is proclamation? This is a practice all over the world. So as much as you want to deal with this, we must address the issue of peaceful demonstration in this country in future, because it's a constitutional right. Article 37 has not been suspended, nor the Constitution of Kenya have it been suspended.
But there is an attempt actually to amend the Article 37, not really, to the Public Order Act. There is an amendment actually, so that you're held responsible if you are the one who's steamrolling these particular demonstrations.
There's a proposed act of parliament. The question is, does that proposed act of parliament conform with Article 37 or is unconstitutional in itself? It's taking away rights given under Article 37.
I think that's you see, the framers of the current constitution, when the constitution as it is generally provides a general framework that requires further domestication through legislative framework, through policy framework, and other means that can easily be contextualized and operationalized. I think what that proposal is doing, and I'm sure it's not a one-night event, it's going to go through public participation, and there's going to be first reading, second reading, every bit of it, is to give effect to Article 10. It ought to have been done actually in 2012, 2013, immediately after the promulgation of this constitution. So there's nothing illegal about it. We will have stages to go through the usual.
I want
to give it effect.
The constitution is very clear on the sections or articles where a law has to be made. The constitution specifically provides.
Yes.
Some of the articles in the constitution are conclusive by themselves. The articles which need further acts of parliament, like recalling a member of parliament. If you go to how you recall a member of parliament, a law has to be made.
A legislation.
Legislation. So it is specific where you need further legislation.
Yes.
It is specific where you need further legislation.
I think what I was trying to imply is this, and I'm sure we have very serious lawyer in the making, the head of Aramal here. Article 37 says every person has the right
Peaceably.
and
unarmed
to assemble, to demonstrate,
to picket and to present petitions to public authorities.
You see,
that is conclusive in itself.
it's not.
Very conclusive.
It is not. Unarmed has to be defined. Peaceful has to be defined. The rights are already given, but you can also amplify. Petitions are already, there's a law on petitions, on how it is done. So I think once this is done within the context of the Penal Code, the Public Petitions Act, the Fair Administrative Action Act, and even I think...
But aren't we really splitting hairs when we try and also define what peaceably is? I mean, it's just self-explanatory.
Peaceably.
Peaceably. There's nothing more than...
Bill of Rights.
It is part of the Bill of Rights.
We'll have different interpretations.
That's what I'm saying. Why do you want to get very prescriptive with what the Constitution is?
Allow me to make a difference.
I see nothing unconstitutional. Of course, ultimately to come to Parliament, there will be public participation. Anything that's unconstitutional
will just be forced through anyway, just like another law. But if you look at Article 104, sub 2, about rights of recall, because you see Article 37 is under Bill of Rights.
Yes.
If you look at rights of recall, like how you can recall a member of parliament, The electorate under Article 97 and 98 have the right to recall the member of parliament representing their constituency before the end of the term of the relevant House of Parliament. And subsection 2, Parliament shall enact legislation to provide the grounds on which a member may be recalled and the procedure, to be followed.
Which we did in 20.
Now, that law of you see, wherever in this constitution, wherever you need to make a further law, it is clear, and the word used is shall. When it comes to Bill of Rights, and Article 7 is very clear.
It's conclusive in itself.
It's conclusive in itself.
Yes.
But then now, there is what we call Public Order Act, which has regulations there under. And under Public Order Act, while people are peacefully demonstrating, and in the event it turns out to be unpeaceful, then a person, the level of OCS or an inspector, somebody high level in police, he's supposed to announce to the people loud and clear
to disperse.
Now you have to disperse and give them about 15 minutes. Then after proclamation, then now you can disperse the people, and whatever happens to them is to their own peril. But what has been happening, even where notice has been given, and Article 7 notice is not necessary, then police are going to say, no, we are not going to allow any demonstrations. Then following that, people are shot dead. There's confrontation between Wananchi and police, which is totally uncalled for.
You see,
and people end up dying. Who takes responsibility of these deaths? Who was the ultimate chain of command?
Okay.
So there's a problem there which we must resolve. Because you see, before we do anything else, there must be justice to the people. And the events which have happened to this country are very serious in nature. But they have attracted international, the United Nations have said, look, this is not right. ICC has been here. Of course, you must have some threshold for ICC to deal with either side. ICC, when it investigates, it can deal with either side. So what happens to the deaths of so many people and the destruction which has happened in the country?
Right, but also where there is an issue of, when you're talking about this Public Order Act that is being amended, you're centering that particular demonstration. If there is a person who's sponsoring the demonstration, then they have to be responsible. But how then do you how then do you know that this particular demonstration is being exacerbated, compounded, and steamrolled by someone who is fueling, funding, and inciting people to actually be demonstrating?
Yeah, you see, there's the spontaneity rule. If the people feel something is not going right and there's a spontaneous, demonstrations because they feel, for example, what happened in Egypt, what happens in France, for example, where the society comes out into the open and says that this is too much, we can't accept this. And then there's the issue of a deliberate planning, plotting, preparation and execution by political leadership of such things. There's a difference between those two things. Even in the US, everybody is now on Donald Trump's neck because of that January 6th incident that happened in the House of Congress, where they say that he had a role, he encouraged it, and he was part of it. And they want to take him to court for that. So the moment a politician gets involved in such a thing, and that thing ends up in a manner that essentially does take away the rights of other people, the right to life, the right to property, you get my point, the right to all these things, then that politician becomes responsible for that. In our case, Owen, in our case, and I'm talking like that, I'm not in Kenya Kwanza. You get my point? And I have been for the longest fighting for the rights of Kenyans. In our case, the reason why there has to be a negotiation between two parties now, you know what I mean, is because one party is in charge of the people out there in the streets who are demonstrating, and the other charge is in charge of the government machinery. You see what I mean? There are two forces here. Raila will call his forces out there and tell them to demonstrate. It's a force. And the monopoly of force is not questionable. The government has to have the monopoly of force and firepower. You can't, as a politician, say, I'm coming out there and I'm going to teach you a lesson, and you're not in government that time. And then the right to property goes, the right to life goes. In the States, one of the biggest problems is you can never harm a member of the security machinery. Now, when you take stones and you throw them at the police, try doing that right now in the States. They'll kill you. You get my point? The fact that 2-3 policemen have been killed in the process itself delegitimizes anything to do with a peaceful demonstration that should be protected under the Constitution. I do agree with what Dan is saying. The Bill of Rights does not need acts of parliament to operationalize. They are conclusive in their own right. But you're supposed to handle it responsibly. If you don't handle it responsibly, then of course the consequences are the same all over the world.
So how then
it's not, you don't have to be, you see, the mother of constitutionalism in the world is the Americans. When a policeman tells you freeze and you resist it, you have seen the amount of force that comes into force. You get my point? And in our case, you can't throw rocks at policemen. You can't go on robbing other people and destroying property and the rest of it, and you say it's a demonstration and you allow that through. Look at what Malema did and South Africa did. Those ones are demonstrations, yes. Picketings are those ones, yes, when you can picket and you go around and everybody sees you don't like something, but going out there into the streets.
Thank you. All right, let's just hear from Owen Baya.
I want to say this, Debal. One, we have people who say that they want to defend the Constitution, but they are still the same people who abuse this Constitution. And I want to emphasize on the word of abuse of the Constitution. This Constitution, in Article 37, gives a responsibility. You know, the rights in Article 37 are given with responsibility, certain responsibilities. Now, my friends in Azimio choose to deal with the rights, but they want to shirk off the responsibilities. Because it says, you can demonstrate, yes, but you have to be peaceably and unarmed. Now, you cannot abuse Article 37 and get away with it. Because what we have with my lawyer friend here will tell me that I'm right on that perspective. Because rights come with obligations. Rights come with responsibility. The responsibility to ensure that the demonstrations, the picketing, and whatever you want to do within Article 37 must come with certain responsibility. And the two responsibilities assigned both to the demonstrators and to the people that are organizing those demonstrations to ensure there is peace and the people are unarmed. Now, Debal, if people wake up in the morning and I have called for a demonstration, one of the things is I must be in charge of that demonstration because I take greater responsibility. Just like you say, the president takes greater responsibility on what happens with the police, or the IG of the police, you know, takes greater responsibility to what the police do, or the individual police person takes responsibility to what he does with his gun. The person who goes out there to demonstrate must also ensure that he takes responsibility for his actions. The person organizing it must also take responsibility. Now, Raila Odinga wakes up in the morning and says, we'll have maandamano on Wednesday. Yes, he needs to define maandamano, protests, and riots. You know, you need to look at, is this a protest? Is this a demonstration? Are these riots? Are these destructive activities that I'm going to engage in? There's a thin line, yes, but that thin line must be respected by whoever is organizing. So when Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga says, okay, we're going to have maandamano, he needs to sit down with his team and tell his team, I want to see a peaceful demonstration. And if you then Manzo, you're going to organize demonstrations in Mlolongo, you will take responsibility to what happens there in terms of keeping peace and in terms of making sure the people are unarmed. But if Dan Mazo takes his troops and the first thing they do is they take stones, put on the road, they look for tires, put on the road and burn. And then they have stones in their hands. They are ready. Now, this demonstrator who stands there with the stones and burning tires, is he breaking the law? What is the role of the police? The role of police to ensure order. So when the policeman goes out to want to arrest this person, that person throws a stone at the police. What will be the response? This person is actually defying arrest. He's defying order. The police is supposed to keep peace and order, to ensure he enforces the peace. Now, this is where we have, that's why I say it is an abuse of Article 37 that the Azimio people have been taking advantage of and making noise.
So is the prime solution actually to come up with that particular bill? Because then how then do you actually, because you've seen this particular issue of, the former President Uhuru Kenyatta has been bankrolling this demonstration, which he stoutly denies. How then do you pinpoint that this is a person who is bankrolling this particular demonstration?
I want to finish.
And now you instill this particular bill.
I want to finish my point on this. As a leader, as a leadership, Azimio needs to take responsibility to the things that they have done and have caused this country and the deaths of the people that have died because of this Mandaman and the deaths of the police people. Because you cannot foment chaos in your country in the name of protest. Fortunately, last week when there were demonstrations in Congo, is it in Congo? Mm-hmm. When they were demonstrating against Kenyan troops. And I was sitting with an Azimio guy who actually has been in the forefront of this Mandaman. He said, how can they do that? How can, how can they demonstrate and they're killing people and doing, how can they do that? Against our troops. And then I looked at him and said, is it the same thing that you've been doing in this country? When it is done in Goma by those people, you ask the question, why are they doing that? Why are they demonstrating against our troops? Why are they banning their country because of Kenyan troops?
Right.
And it's the same people who do the same thing here. Waswahili say, nyani haoni kundule. And it is the same thing. When it is done somewhere else, they say, I want to go there and keep peace. And Raila Odinga will say, I want to be the peacekeeper. Uhuru Kenyatta says, I want to go and keep peace in Goma, in DRC. But he is unable to exercise the same thing here in this country and tell his Azimio party leader and tell him, no, you can't do this because I have a responsibility to do it in other countries. I also have a responsibility to do it in this country. So I want to call out Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga and tell them they should stop abusing the constitution for which they want to take pride in having enacted in this country. They are wrong, they should not do it, and they should ensure peace in this country.
Let's hear from Aidan.
Yes, I think there are two aspects. The right to picket, the right to associate, the right to assemble is a fundamental constitutional right.
Yes.
But it comes with a burden. Yes. And this is one thing that the framers of our current
responsibility.
It comes with a responsibility.
Yes.
The burden is you must take responsibility
for your actions.
For your actions. That's why in our own constitutional framework we say criminal responsibility is individual. Look at this. There has been picketing in South Africa. This thing actually didn't start from Kenya. The current Mandamandos actually was simultaneous. South Africa, France, Senegal, Tunis, and even to some extent, Israel. In fact, we have had the highest demonstrations. The demonstrations that have attracted the highest number of people in Paris and Tel Aviv. Have you heard of any incident of looting? I'm told 2 Sundays ago, they have had close to 1 million people in Tel Aviv.
Yes, sir.
Million people in Tel Aviv protesting against that reasonable law the coalition government actually introduced.
The judicial reform.
Have you had any incident of somebody being maimed, somebody being killed? Even this morning, I could see them waving flags outside the Knesset in Israel. The Knesset. If you go to Washington, you will see every day outside White House people who picket, carrying peaceful flags, saying this is. They do everything within the confines of the law. If you go to the New York, where the UN square, you will see people picketing. France, I'm told, is still going on, millions. Even the president actually can't go. The same is happening in Tunis. You have had Olema the other day asking the Azimio team stop their violent protest, and it was a comrade actually in their protest. Yes. I think let's be honest with ourselves. We need to separate Goonism is a culture. Yes. That is what we have been tracing in Kenya. The right to picket, the right to associate is a fundamental constitutional, but equally allow also those who are not interested in that picketing to enjoy their rights peacefully, to undertake their business ventures, do what they want to do. And when you meet, you say, I am picketing as part of my right. Also allow the other person to engage his business as part of his or her family. This is one thing that is missing, that culture. And until we get that culture, our mandamandos will always be associated with violence, looting, call it all sort of evil things. And the individuals, that's why I support this enactment. Our constitution is not prescriptive.
But the question is, all right.
Our constitution is not prescriptive, it's a framework. Providing a law that will domesticate, that will operationalize the effect of Article 37. Of course, if there's anything unconstitutional, we will not support it. But given the framework, will allow both the initiator of a public protest and the public also who want to enjoy peace to have some sort of semblance of relationship.
But the question then becomes, we've had demonstrations throughout the years. We're celebrating 13 years of this constitution.
Yes.
This is not the first time that we actually been on the streets. We've been there before, we've been there in 2017. One will ask, why is it this particular time that we find it to be very providential to come up with this enactment? Why?
Enactment of
this particular amendment of this Public Order Act.
The law is progressive. There's something I want to introduce.
That's what I'm saying. The law is progressive, but you find it to be very providential right now for it to be progressive. Yet you have also the gender rule, which is very progressive, but you've never actually instilled gender rule.
But you remember there was a court order in the last parliament. Parliament was almost dissolved by
there has not been any political will to do it.
The fact that it was not done at that particular time doesn't mean that it should not be done. You see, this is an evolving process. This is a very dynamic society. I'm sure the ties that you used to put on 1 year ago and the one that you have right now are slightly different.
This is the same.
The change is just
because there are many. It's a very old tie. So my tie is progressive.
Even the look might be progressive.
Yes.
You see, we are living in a very dynamic society.
Indeed.
When things change, you also have to change. If you go to UK, there's something that they do in their curriculum annually. I don't know whether you have, every year they have a curriculum review.
Yeah.
So they say they carry out market survey and they look at the new innovation and say, this year, actually they have an annual event on curriculum changes. If you look at the content is the same. But what they have done is in order to entice the student, they will say, in medicine, there are the following discoveries, there are the following innovations. In ICT, then you realize suddenly, and that is where they want the country, the direction the country they want to go. So they say they encourage students. So you realize in 2 years, 3 years, many students will opt for that course. So Saudi Arabia also does the same. So you realize in 10, 15, 20 years that they have equipped their public professionals with individuals now who are qualified, especially when they realize there's a deficit. I think in the Kenya context, we need to be receptive, we need to be accommodative. Change is a must. And this change is both psychological and real. So what we are seeing right now, and this is what I want to urge, the proponents of mandabandos. The rights will always continue to be a constitutional framework.
All right.
But equally, let's also allow the other people to peacefully enjoy their rights. And I think that's what has been lacking.
Yeah, but what he raises also in the UK,
so it doesn't become a culture.
They don't have. They have the Magna Carta.
It doesn't become a culture. Like yesterday, I'll tell you an incident. Somewhere in Kileleshwa, Mandera Road, suddenly a group of individuals came up with their motorbikes and attempted to put roadblock. What they have, and that area is very close to one of the supermarkets which was looted. What will the police do? You do not know their intention. That's a residential area. Those people have the right to enjoy peace. What will the police do? You do not know their intention. You do not know who has sponsored, and suddenly you realize a group of. That's why the rule of law protects everywhere. The rule of law protects the picketer, plus also.
Thank you. Right. Still on progressive. Yes. You mentioned UK now. I want maybe to latch on the UK a bit. They don't have a constitution, do they?
They have a tradition.
They don't have a written constitution.
But they have a tradition.
They don't have a written constitution, but they have a tradition. Yeah. And the tradition is progressive. If tradition is progressive, then it's not tradition.
No, they have
the Magna Carta.
And precedents. Both written and unwritten.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The precedents, like today, eminent persons in the name of advocates or lords make a very important pronouncement decision, that forms part of the archive. It becomes a precedent. It's become also somehow also part of the religion. And then there are norms that have been, everybody has accepted. British tradition, both written and unwritten. Therefore, you as a citizen, you as a resident, or you as whatever in that particular country, you are expected to conform to that particular norm. So it becomes a British tradition. That's why it's difficult actually to break.
So yeah, it becomes difficult to gauge what is the progressiveness of that precedent or the tradition. Because if it's a tradition and then there is a progressiveness to the tradition, it ceases to be a tradition. That is very
the tradition, I do not want to give you the religious interpretation or a monarchical interpretation. If you look at it even, you see, society changes. That's why I tell you, if you go back to what your forefather used to do and what you are doing right now, culturally, you may have some linkage. But in terms of outlook, you are completely different. But you still subscribe to that genealogy, that this is the genealogy of Baal and this, and that's why maybe you say I come from this particular tribe or this particular region. But there are certain things that have changed. Factors of problem. The land system has changed.
The environment as well.
The environment has changed. Yes. You must conform to this.
All right. There's just one aspect of this. First and foremost, the Kenyan maandamano has been misunderstood, and unfortunately politics have also been put into it. If you remember the day Honorable Raila Odinga was sworn as a people's president, the directive from the government was that the police not to interfere with the matter, although they were present. There was no tear gas and there was no gunshot.
Because there are no stones and there are no sticks.
And everybody went on peacefully.
It was peaceful, yes.
And everybody went on peacefully. And recently when Honorable Raila Odinga took Matatu, went to town, brushed his shoes, walked around, and eventually addressed a very big rally in town. There was no gunshot, there was no tear gas.
Because there were no stones.
And there was no issue. But I remember the first maandamano, and in fact that's where the peace talks should have begun. The first day this was announced, that would have been the first day the president would have called upon Raila Odinga, and I believe no one up to today would have died. But there are certain people like the leader of Majority National Assembly, Honorable Ishungwa, who have, made political statements which have also irritated the other side of divide. And I think the president has been on hijack by certain individuals in the country. And I think that's where the problem begins. I believe you can have peaceful demonstration in this country and there's no trouble at all. But the moment, the first demonstration, I remember that time at Serena, the response was a tear gas canister. And that's what bred chaos. So I believe we need to look at this so that we have also a good culture, practice and precedence whereby rights of every individual is respected. Because the violence does not begin with the people. The violence so far begins with the police, and the police has taken political sides. Honorable Baya, you have also brought in the name of Raila Odinga and the name of Uhuru Kenyatta into this. I think you have to withdraw it unless you give particulars what exactly they have done. The Honorable Raila Odinga has called for demonstrations. The police have thrown tear gas and guns. I can assure you there would have been no trouble in Wote or Emali or even Mulolongo, where I have lost, in Makueni County, we have buried 4 people out of this chaos. It all started when the police used a tear gas canister or used a gun. Without that, there would never, when innocent children were shot, students, when innocent student was shot at Monolongo is when chaos.
Thank you.
I think you have to withdraw that because you really, there are rumors and Uhuru Kenyatta has cleared himself out of this. Honorable Raila Odinga has not thrown a stone. So I think it will not be fair. I mean, for that to.
So I want to just establish first of all before we come to you, Owen Baya. Where is this bill at right now? Is it on the first reading? This the bill to.
This bill is still a legislative proposal.
It's a proposal.
It's still a draft. Just a letter, not even a draft, a letter that was written to the Speaker to request that the honourable member get support to draft the bill. It is at that level.
It's at that level.
Yes.
I am in jail, and I haven't seen it.
You've not seen it?
Actually, there are stages under the current, in our standing
I'm in the Justice and Legal Affairs
It's
Committee.
still
the stages
very raw.
of preparation of it's
I haven't
a
seen
lengthy
that
one.
yet.
It's a lengthy one. But still, it seems there
By the
is
time it
a
comes
bit
to
of
the
optimism towards this particular bill, or there is opposition towards it. Because I remember also, Farah, you were on this particular panel.
No.
Was it,
There is no. I don't think we will have to see it. By the way,
Yes.
once we see it,
Is
we
when
see-
now you can
whether it meets certain thresholds, whether there's a serious lacuna that this has,
You know,
this has
you
got,
see- you
or
see-
avoid this has got
is it
to
the
fill
ban?
in. Yeah.
Is it the ban?
We look at it from every
One of
aspect.
the things I think
We're running this country for posterity, not just for today.
the media people, of course, I don't know whether you are included in that, but the media
I'm part of
people
media.
have a way of picking up something and rolling it up. That legislative bill by the Mheshimiwa Rocco is still in infancy. It's just, I write a letter to the Speaker. I said, Speaker, kindly, I want to make the following changes on this law, and therefore give me aid to, to draft. It has not even left the Speaker, the drafters' chambers, But because it is seen from a negative perspective, then people have taken it up and want to say, this is what government wants to do, this and this. This is a private member's bill. And a private member's bill, by the time, by 2026 probably, it will not have finished its journey. It takes long.
Actually, there are stages.
Yes.
There are stages.
Yes, pre-publication, publication, committee, budget, and then the first reading.
Yeah.
It will take
but it
3
becomes a
years.
suspect, when it is introduced
Yes.
during demonstrations.
Yes.
Then it seems then there's ulterior motive
Because
with the bill.
as a
That's why
legislator,
people
as a
now will take a keen
legislator-
interest on this particular bill. Why is
Yes.
it being introduced now when we have demonstrations?
As a legislator, I look at a situation and say, I think here there's a lacuna in law. And therefore, you look at, so why are we having deaths in these demonstrations? Why are we having these problems? I think there's a lacuna in law. Therefore, you go to that article and say, probably I want to give effect to what peaceably is. What is the role of the police? What is the role of the initiator of the convener? What is it that we can do to make demonstrations neater, more peacefully? That is what Mheshimiwa Ruku is trying to do, not to restrain the enjoyment of the rights in Article 37, but actually to ensure it is better for the people and the public order act. But I wanted to
in breach of our standing order because now we're anticipating debate.
Anticipating the debate.
But I want to say a few things to what to
and then we wind up. I want
what-
us to look also at some of these issues that are being raised that will be discussed as well.
I want to respond to what Dan Mazo said, and I want to state this, that one of the things that the demonstrators do, and I remember the first incident where tear gas was lobbed at Serena. The police was very clear, don't use this route. As a demonstrator, why is it that I must inform the police? I must inform the police so that the police can come back to me as the organizer, tell me, it will not be good for you to use this route, but we recommend that you use this route, because this route, you might disrupt the enjoyment of the rights of other people on this route, but on this route it is safer, and we can control the traffic for you, and also you will not disrupt traffic. That is the reason why we inform the police. Now, when you go out there and tell the police, but the police tell you, no, don't go into the CBD. Because the problem with the Maandamano people is they always want to go into the CBD. And that demonstrations, that convoy that Raila Odinga was leading, they were trying to push to get into the CBD. Now, there are three things that will happen in the CBD. One, there's a lot of business that is done on the roadside and many other things. If you take protesters into the CBD, they will distract the enjoyment of the rights of the business people. Two, if you don't have control with the people that you're going in with for those demonstrations, if they are rowdy, they are likely to loot, they are likely to break in, they are likely to cause damage. Third, they are going to cause traffic congestion and blockage because you have not prepared motorists. If there is a marathon in this country, the police will announce a day earlier that we are closing this route because the runners will use this route, the motorists will. Now, if you are always intent at getting into the CBD, what is your motive? So the police told these guys, and I was watching that thing live, and they said, please don't use this route because you're going to the CBD and you're going to disrupt business. Please use the Gong Road on the other side. But they insisted. So what does a policeman do? He lobbies a tear gas to disrupt you because you're going to disrupt other people's businesses and their enjoyment of the right. Now, What we see usually, and I think last week, 3 weeks ago, when I think we were away with the president and they managed to sneak into the CBD, Raila actually stood and said, congratulated the young people. I don't know if you remember that. He congratulated the young people for having made it into the CBD. What is in the CBD? Why does he want to get into the CBD? And the only reason is to go and disrupt business, allow the young people to loot, allow the young people to destroy property.
Thank you.
Saw the properties that are destroyed in the CBD. And I want to tell Madam Manzo, when you're organizing these demonstrations, and because I'm sure you are at that table, where as we are at the table of ensuring resources go to Kenyans for prosperity, they're on the table of discussing on how to destroy the country. When you are there, please tell them, let's avoid the CBD. Let's obey the routes and allow police to direct us into where we can do our mandamanos.
Thank you. Regulations, there are no regulations.
And that is what we are doing.
The interior,
and that is what we are doing now.
has failed the country.
But here's the point he has missed. Yes. You see the messaging, like when you call for mandamano and you say we would go into State House to take over State House.
Yes. There has been no message like that.
No, go back. No, listen to this. I remember one of the messages said, one of the process actors said, today at 11 we'll be at the State House.
And State House Road.
And that is how this mandamano
I tell you, look at some of the Facebook posts. I don't want to say the individual who did. You're asking innocent individuals, unemployed youth, that there'll be a power shift. So you're telling them at 11, let us congregate at the State House. We will capture power. We will reclaim our victory.
We will throw the president
we will throw
out.
The government. That is what has gone into their mind. So they come prepared, some of them for celebration, some of them for part of the loot, the anticipated loot from the State House. What do you expect the police to do? And who takes responsibility for that violence?
All right, but there is a difference. I think he's given you a very emblematic scenario of where in Communicado, we had Raila going to town, there was no alert from the police, and everything just went peacefully, right? There was no throwing of stones, he addressed the crowd there because the police were not aware and they were caught unaware.
No, I want to correct you this. This country has one of the most elaborate, effective, highly professional intelligence system. And I can tell you, having been the former chair of Defense and Foreign Relations, to that extent,
yes,
the police and everybody else within the security sector knew what was going on, and they allowed it because there was no violence. And there was no call to violent takeover or regime change. So when they say this is peaceful, you're boarding a matatu, you're going to the town, let's escort you to go to town. There's nothing wrong. And that's what actually the essence of...
Okay, I want us to gravitate from the issue of protest now, and we focus now on the dialogue.
Dialogue.
Yes.
What's the dialogue about?
Yes, this is what now I want to bring. What's the dialogue about? What are we dialoguing about?
I'm asking you.
Yes.
What is the dialogue about?
Yeah, there's a silent point.
As far as I'm concerned, there is absolutely nothing to dialogue about.
Yes.
Nothing to dialogue about except hang on a minute. Except if you have to get a job for somebody. And I think that has already been taken care of. Very soon you'll be hearing so and so is. Now what is the in thing? Climate change is the in thing, yeah? Am I right? Yeah, but the previous one.
No, but Farah,
just a moment.
Let's not be very simplistic about it, because I think you've seen what it has really done.
What is it about? I want you to intellectually, get your mind into this thing. Subject yourself to serious thought on what is there to dialogue about. We're in a democracy, for God's sake. This is not the clans of Somalia who are dialoguing on something, whether they should have a state together, whether they should go their separate ways, whether they should, all of them disband their militias and put them into the national army. It's not about Hemeti and Burhan in Sudan. For God's sake, we have a system. There's the instruments of government. We went through an election. Those instruments of the government are in the hands of the government. Let the government administer this country for the next 5 years. Give us an opportunity as members of parliament to deliver to our people in the best way we can. If we can grow this economy, fine. If they screw up the country, we throw them out.
So the question becomes again, so there is no providence for you to question even the running of his government? When you feel there are ills, and of course the system, you have a system, but the system is getting gamed, so to speak. You don't have a voice to actually put...
That's precisely, we have parliament. What is the role of parliament? Representation, legislation, and scrutiny. If they're misusing the money, they're stealing money, and their corruption is rampant, use Parliament to go and bring them out. Do the whistleblowing and everything else. If there is a problem skewed what you call development, and you think all the resources are going to one part of the country and the rest of the country is starved, I'm very happy to have that, because I think for the next 10 years, all these resources will go to our side.
All right.
Our side has been starved for 60 years.
Okay.
I'm talking about Northeastern Province.
So when you're talking about Parliament, even I think there was an article yesterday by Professor Collins Odete as well, questioning the nature of debates that we have in Parliament. And what was the issue at hand was the fact that these protests were being debated in the House, and he followed through the debates, and he really questioned the sort of leadership and the questions that were being, forwarded by some of the legislators. And I said, there's lack of leadership. I'll try and just wrinkle out the information from where it is on the other side of a break, so that we can go through it. So the question is, even when you're talking about there is Parliament, which is a system, but the quality of the debate on the floor of the House is wanting.
It is very wanting.
You are the Speaker.
I was the Speaker. I was in this Parliament in 1992, my friend, 1993. And I remember exactly how it was. This is a pale shadow of whatever this Parliament has ever been since independence. Are you getting my point? There are no issues.
There are no issues. So, and you want us to take issues there?
Of course.
Because that's the system. All right, let's hear from Dan Mazi.
Having served in all. Yes. I think having served in all.
Can we hear from Dan Mazi?
Yeah, I want to say also, I've been, luckily, all of us here have been in Parliament for many years.
Yes.
Unfortunately, when the new constitution came...
Dan Mazi, allow me just to take a short break so that we can continue. I don't want to go through it, get into the thick of it, then I cut it short. We want to take a short break.